What's up everybody, welcome back. So finally a new video. First of all, I'm sorry for not uploading about 2 or 3 months. In this video I'm not gonna explain what happened and why I wasn't online. If you want to know a little bit more about that, you can check out the Discord, there's a message in there. For now we're just gonna continue where we left off a while ago, and that's working on the AI. So I'm just going to continue this series and I want to finish it. So we're just going to keep going. For today, I want to take a look at the hit react animations and the death animations. So not really behavior, but still something that's pretty important. And we're going to set it up in this video. And it's also been about 2 or 3 months that I have opened the project in Unreal. So I'll probably won't be as smooth as I was before. And I'll probably make a few mistakes along the way. So forgive me, but nonetheless, we're gonna give it a go and we're gonna see how it goes. So for everybody that's still around, thank you all for your patience, and I hope you still enjoy my videos. So yeah, let's go. So the hit reactions and the death animations. First of all, let's take a look at the actual animations, and we want to do some setup in here. So let's look for the hit reactions first. We're going to make these additive animations and then we're going to turn them into montages so we can play them from a character. So in general, if you want to play animation sequences from the character blueprint, you want to use montages, and if you are playing them from the animation blueprint, you might want to prefer sequences. You can use montages in animation blueprint as well, but the other way around isn't really useful. So the hit react animations, let's open this one up, and we want to make sure that these are additive. So on the left side, we're going to go to the additive animation type, turn it into mesh space additive. And then for the base pose type, we want to select frame from this animation, so the lower option. And we simply want to use frame 0, so that's fine. Then let's save it. And we want to do the same thing for all of them. So to make it a little bit easier, we can select the other 3 and then right click, go to Asset Actions, and then we want to do bulk edit via property matrix. And then in here, we can actually change the setting as well, I think. So yeah, over here, additive settings, we can expand it and then set the additive animation type over here. Change this to the frame from this animation and then reference frame 0. So now we have all 3 of them updated at once. Close it down and let's make sure that we have everything saved. So we want to turn these into montages. So select all 4 of them, right click, go to create and then create animation montage. And then we have 4 montages. So let's hit enter and it will open up all 4 of them. So as you can see, they are additive, so they are actually fine. They are not broken, that's good. We want to change the slot that we're using over here. So right now we have the default slot and we also have the full body slot that we're using for the idle break animations, if I recall correctly. It's been a while. So we want to add a third slot that we can use for additive animations, so we can add them in a different place in the animation blueprint. So we want to go to the animation slot manager over here, and if you don't have it, you can simply go to window and then open it through here. And in here we want to add a slot and simply enter a name. So let's call this additive hit react, for example. And it will create a new slot for us. So now we can go over here and select that slot name, additive hit react. So change that. The animation will freeze, but it doesn't actually break anything. We can simply save it and ignore that, and that's good to go. So in here for the other montages, we want to do the same thing. So change the slot name to the new additive hit react slot. And then all of those should be good to go. So let's get rid of those. And then we also wanted to look at our death animations. So let's go to the death animations. And we're going to use these upper 5 ones. So for the iron sights where we're aiming and the normal death animations, we're going to ignore prone for now. So we want to add notifies in here so we can trigger a ragdoll event on our character. So let's open one up. And we want to select the frame where we want to add the notify. So you probably want to do it somewhere halfway when he's falling down or something. And then over here for the notifies, you want to right click on this bar and then add a notify. And we want to add a new one. So select new notify and simply type in a name. So let's call it start ragdoll. And then we also want to add this notify to the other death animations. So let's open those up and look for a frame where it might fit. Somewhere over here maybe. And now because we already created it, we can go to add notify and then skeleton notifies. And over here we have our start ragdoll. So select it over here and add it to all 5 of the death animations. So somewhere around here maybe. Let's add our start ragdoll. And then we have 2 iron sights animations. So let's do those as well. Add notify, skeleton notify, start ragdoll, and the last one somewhere around here maybe. Okay, so that's good to go as well. Let's close that down and make sure everything is saved. And the next thing we want to do is create an interface. So I'm going to add an interface to our animation blueprint. And this is just for organization's sake, but I'm creating a separate interface for each actor that we're adding it to, just to keep things a little bit organized and not end up with one huge interface where you don't know where everything is for. So this is just a little bit organization's sake. Let's right click, go to blueprints and then blueprint interface. And let's call this one our BPI AI NMBP. And then interface. There we go. Open this one up and we're going to add one function for now, and that's going to be AI trigger death animation. And we want to give it an input, and that's going to be an integer. So that's going to be the death index or death animation index. That's probably better. And then turn it into an integer. Compile and save. So we have our interface good to go as well. So let's go to, we can implement it if we are setting up the animation blueprint, that's fine. So first of all, let's go into our guard blueprint and start setting up things in there. Let's go to our guard character blueprint. And in here, first of all, let's do the start ragdoll event. So let's look for an empty spot and we're going to create a new custom event and call this one start ragdoll. And in here, we want to set the collision and the collision profile for the mesh. So the collision for the capsule. Let's do that one first. The capsule, we're going to drag it in and set collision enabled. So we don't want to collide with our capsule anymore. So set collision enabled and leave it to no collision. And after that, we want to grab our mesh component. And for the mesh, we're going to set a collision profile by name. So this one. And then we want to set it to the profile name ragdoll. So simply type in ragdoll over here. And this refers to the actual collision presets. So if you go to the mesh and then look for the collision over here. So we have collision presets, and in here is the ragdoll preset. So you can use all of these names in here to change the collision profile, and all of these are defined in your project settings. So we have the collision profile set to Rectal, and then we want to start simulating physics. So we're going to drag off the mesh again, and then set all bodies simulate physics. And these actually refer to the mesh component, so we can get rid of that one and make sure it's plugged in. And then we want to set the new simulate to true, so we are actually simulating physics. And so that's all we're gonna do for now in here. So let's compile and save. And now we can call it from our animation blueprint. So let's open this one up first. And in here, we're gonna add the interface that we created. So we wanna go to the class settings, and in an animation blueprint, you can just implement an interface just like you can in any other blueprint. So in here, we're gonna add the AI animation blueprint interface, the one that we created a little bit earlier. And then after that, we have our AI triggered that animation. So let's double click it to add it to our animation blueprint. And for this, we actually need two new variables. So we're going to use the animation index. So let's drag off here, promote it to a variable, and that's our that animation index. That's fine. And we also need a boolean, so let's add a new bool, and this is going to be is alive. So in here we want to set it to false, and we also want to make sure that we set the default. So we need to compile it and then select it and make sure our default is true, otherwise we are dying instantly. So this is the interface event, and now we also want to set up the animation notify event for the start rectal notify that we added to our animations. So we're going to right click, and then we have the add animation notify event, and over here we have the one for the start rectal notify that we created. So let's add this one, and in here all we want to do is grab our guard reference, and from there we're going to call the start rectal event on the character. Plug it in, and that's good to go. So this is everything we need in the event graph, and then we also want to set up the animation graph. So let's open that one up as well. And all the way at the end, right before the output pose, we have our full body slot. So that's where we play the idle break animations, for example. And we also want to implement our additive hit reactions. So let's disconnect the output pose for now. And we're going to add a second slot node. So all these slots do is simply define where they are played. So there's nothing really special going on. This simply means that the additive hit reactions will be added all the way at the end of the animation graph. So for example, if I would add, well, first of all, let's make sure that if we have the node selected, we actually select our additive hit reaction slot. But if I would add it to a branch over here, for example, and then this branch executes, then obviously this node is not connected, so it won't be implemented, for example. And if I would implement it over here, and then or let's say over here right before the full body slot, then if we play a full body animation, this will actually override everything in front of it, so we don't see the additive hit reactions. So a slot doesn't really do anything, it's just a name, but you define what it does in the animation graph by the way, by implementing it differently. So that's the additive hit reaction slot. We can simply add it over there, and after that we want to add a blend by bool node, and with that we're gonna play our death animation. So blend poses by bool, and we can plug in our is alive boolean. So if we are alive, we are simply using the animation graph as we had it set up already. And if it's false, we want to grab a second blend by bool. And over here, we can determine if we are aiming or not. So let's grab our is aiming bool and plug that in over here. And then we want to play our different death animations. So we can use blend poses by integer, for example. So look for blend by integer. And then over here, we can plug in our death animation index. So we have 3 normal death animations and 2 for the aiming. So I'm simply going to add 3 options to both of them, so we can pick a random number between 0 and 3. And that way we don't have to take into account that we only have 2 options if we are aiming. So let's right click over here and let's add a blend pin. So we have 3 options over here. And we can simply add our death animations. So this is the death iron sights because the blend pose is aiming is true. So let's plug it in over here. Death iron sights aim 1 and death iron sights 2. And then I'm simply going to grab number 1 again and plug that in the third option. So that's good to go. Let's copy this node, paste it over here, and also plug in our death animation index. Connect this one to the false pin, and this will play the normal death animations. So 1, 2, and 3. And simply plug them in like this. So that should be good, and now all we want to do is hook this one back up to the output pose, and that should be all. So let's double check in the preview editor. So if we set is alive to false, it will play our death animation, so that's good to go. We can close that down for now, and we can go back into our character to finish the setup for the hit reactions. Let's open up the guard character blueprint, and in here we're going to do the final setup. So we need a bunch of variables along the way, and we're going to start with a new boolean. So let's add a new variable, and that's going to be is in combat. So we don't want to replicate this one. This is a variable that's only used on the server's instance, so it doesn't really matter. We're not going to replicate it. And we want to add it to our event AI start combat. So this is the interface event. This will run server side. So this will make sure that the server changes it and the server is the only one checking it. So that's fine. We're going to plug it in over here and set is in combat to true. And then we're going to create a new event, or not create it, but implement it in this case. And that's the point damage event. So let's look for point damage. Oh. Event point damage. So this is from the built-in damage system from Unreal, and if we call the event apply point damage, then this will respond to it. So that's what we're going to use from our character blueprint. And the first thing we want to do in here is add a branch and check if we are alive. So we need a new bool for that. So let's add it, call it is alive. And for this one, we actually want to replicate it as a rep notify. So replication over here, set it to rep notify. And we're going to go back to the function over here later. First, we're going to check if we are alive or not. And we're only going to continue if we are. Then we want to subtract our health. And we also need to add that variable. So let's create a new float over here and call it health. And for the health, currently I'm not going to replicate it, so I'm only going to change it and check it server side, and that should be fine. Later we might get back to it if we want to decide to add a health bar that all clients need to see, for example. But that's not the case currently, so right now I'm not going to replicate it. We're going to drag in a getter, and we're going to grab a second branch, plug this one into the true pin, so if we are alive, we want to know if the damage that we are receiving is greater than or equal to our health. So let's do greater than or equal and plug in our health. So this will be in case we have a one-shot kill. And in that case, we don't want to trigger our combat state. So if we get a headshot, for example, we're not going to trigger combat state. The AI is just going to die. But in other cases, if we apply damage, the AI is going to go into combat. That's probably a normal reaction if you get shot. So first of all, let's continue from the true pin. If we are actually getting a one-shot kill, So then we want to subtract the damage from our health. So let's grab a setter over here, plug it into the true pin, and we're simply going to subtract it from a getter. So let's grab a getter from the health, do subtract, and then we can grab the damage from the event again and plug it in over here. Then let's clamp this just to make sure. So we're going to clamp a float. And the minimum is going to be 0. The maximum, it doesn't really matter. We're subtracting, but let's set it to 100. And then plug it in over here into the setter. And then we want to check if it's 0 or not. So plug in a branch, drag up here, and we're going to check if it's 0. So because we clamped it, we can simply use an equal node. That should work fine. And if we are actually dying over here, so if it is 0, then we want to trigger our death animation. Excuse me. So for the death animation, we need a new variable as well, and that's going to be the animation index. So we're going to create a new death and index variable, and that's going to be a float. An integer. And we want to set this to replicated to make sure that the host and all clients see the same death animation. So that's the only reason we're replicating it from the character. Otherwise, in a single player game, you could have just picked a random integer from the animation blueprint. But in this case, we need to do it server side on the character and then send it to all clients. So let's grab our death animation index, plug it in over here, and we're simply going to set it to a random integer in range. So we have 3 death animations, so 0, 1, and 2. And after that, we want to set our isAlive boolean, so plug it in over here. And we are no longer alive, so that will also fire the notify function, and we're going to get back to that in a little bit. So that's the top branch, and now we want to create a little bit of room over here. So over here, if we don't have a one-shot kill, then we want to make sure that the AI goes into combat state. And we want to play a hit react animation as well. So first of all, let's drag off the false pin. I'm going to add a sequence just to make it a little bit cleaner. And then we need a boolean or 2. So first of all, let's create a new bool over here and call this isHitReact cooldown. So this is going to be a normal boolean, not replicated. This is only used server side. And then we're going to add a second boolean, and that's going to trigger the actual animation. So let's call this trigger and then hit react animation. So for this one, we're going to set it to a rep notify, and that will add the function for us. And then we also need the actual variation. So that is the integer again that we're using to determine what animation we're going to play. So let's add another variable, and that's going to be the hit react variation. That's an integer, and that's going to be a normal replicated variable. So the first thing we want to do over here is grab a branch to check if we have a cooldown active for the hit reaction. So otherwise, if we use an automatic weapon, for example, and we fire full auto, then the AI will pretty much be stun locked. So I want to make sure that we have a maximum or 2 or 3 times a second that we play the hit react animation. So if the cooldown is false, then we're going to set the cooldown to true. So plug it into the false pin and set it to true. Then we're going to grab the hit react variation and set it to a random integer. So random integer in range. And in this case, we have 4 options. So 0, 1, 2, and 3. And after that, we want to trigger the actual animation. So we're going to grab the bool, plug it in over here, and also grab a setter. And then we're going to flip it around. So turn it into a not bool and plug it in over here. So that's also the reason we have a separate boolean to trigger the animation, and we're not using the actual integer. If we don't change the variable, then the onWrap function does not fire. So if it was 0 and it will pick the 0 again the next time, then the onWrap function on clients will not fire, so it doesn't work. So that's why we simply use a bool to trigger the animation, and we're flipping it around from false to true and true to false. So this will make sure it will always fire the onWrap function over here. So after we fired it, we're going to wait for a little bit, and then we're going to set our cooldown back to false. So simply add a small delay in here. I'm going to set it to 0.33 seconds, for example, and then grab our hit react cooldown and set this one back to false. So this only happens server side, this is not replicated, and this will also prevent that we are setting replicated variables when we don't want to set them. So this will save a little bit of extra, bandwidth, I guess. Okay, so that's good to go. And then after that, we also want to make sure that we subtract the health. So we simply plug it in over here into the setter for the health with the float clamp hooked up to it. And then over here for the second pin on the sequence node, we actually want, okay, so that's my bad. We don't want to hook this one up to the health setter because we are using a sequence, and we're going to do that in the next run. So disconnect this one, I'm sorry. And then go back to the sequence over here. And for that one, we want to make sure that we go into combat state. So we can grab our bool for that first. And we're going to check if we are not already in combat state. So is in combat, plug it in over here. And if this is false, then we can call the event on the game mode, and that will trigger the combat for all AI. So that will make sure that the actual combat is on, not just for this single AI, but for all AI in the game. So let's go right click and get our game mode. And on the game mode, we have a component. So we want to get our component by class. So the single, the top one, not components, but component. And over here, we can select our AI game mode component. And then on that component, we can call our start combat event over here and simply plug this one into the false pin. And this one, we want to hook it up to the actual health setter over here in the top branch. So we're going to plug that in over here and also grab the true pin from the is in combat and also plug that in over here. So that should be good to go. If we move this over here and then move this over here, so that looks a little bit cleaner. So the first branch over here from the sequence is a dead end, and then the second branch over here is hooked up to the top branch where we set the health. Okay, that should be good to go. And then we pretty much have everything done. We do want to make sure that we set our is alive bool to true as the default value. And we also want to set the health by default to 100 or at least something above 0. So make sure we have those defaults set, and then we can close this one down. And we also want to make sure that we have an apply point damage event in our player character. So for me, that's simply the third person character. And in here we did a basic setup where we can test firing. So we have the server fire weapon event. And for me, it's actually already in here, but I'm not fully sure if I did this in a video or not. It's been 2 or 3 months longer. So let's make sure that it's in here. We have the line trace by channel, break the hit result, and from the hit result we're going to check if the hit actor is valid. So if we didn't hit an actor, then we don't need to apply the point damage. So If this is not valid, we're simply going to bypass the point damage event and continue to the weapon fired event. If the hit actor is valid, hook up apply point damage. The damage, we're going to grab it from the event, so that's simple. You can simply pass it on. Hit from direction, you want to grab a get unit direction vector node, grab the location, plug it in the from pin, and then the 2 is simply get actor location from the player character, so self. That's the hit from direction. Then we have the hit result or the hit info. You can grab it from the line trace and simply plug it in. The instigator needs to be a controller, so we can grab the player controller and hook that up. And then the damage causer is the character in this case, so that's an actor. So we can plug in a reference to ourselves. And excuse me, if we have this event in place, then we should be good to go, I think. So let's close this down, make sure everything is saved. And let's just test it with 2 players. Listen server, that's fine. So let's see, let's move the client back over here so we can actually see what's happening. Let's do him outside the line of sight over here. And then from the server, we can go over here. So if I fire at him, he will go into combat state, and that will make sure he doesn't go and chase me. So let's shoot at him. Now we should see hit react animations, and we actually don't see them, so that's nice. Let's see if we have death animations. We also don't have death animations. So let me see over here. Isn't live is true, so that should be good. We did set it to true over here. Nope. I'm gonna quickly check what's wrong. Oh wait, I already know. I forgot to set up the unwrap functions over here. So that's why nothing is actually happening, probably. So let's go to the unwrap trigger hit react animation. And for this one, we want to play an animation montage. So let's drag off here and do play animation montage. Yeah, that's in here. So for the montage, we can drag off and we're going to look for a select node. And then for the select node, we can simply add 2 more pins. So now we have 4 options and we can simply plug in each one of our hit react montages. And then for the index, we're going to grab our hit react variation and plug it in over here. So that should be all we need to do in here. And then we have the unwrap is alive function. So let's do that one as well. And in here, let's set up the awareness icon. So we are doing this in here, so we don't need to actually replicate the component and things like that. We only want to change this once if we are dying. So this is a cheaper way of handling it. So we're going to drag off here and set hidden in game. Plug it in over here and make sure the awareness icon is hidden. And then we're going to trigger the death animation. So that's on our animation blueprint. And we implemented the interface. So we can grab the mesh component. And from the component, we can get our animation instance. And that's the actual animation blueprint. So then we can simply drag off here and call the interface function. So that was AI trigger death animation. So from the animation blueprint interface, AI trigger death, plug it in over here and simply plug in the death animation index variable like so. Okay, so now we have a bit better chance this actually works. So let's test again. And let's move this guy over here. So there's actually an animation playing, so that looks a little bit better. So the AI is in combat state right now, so he's not going to chase me because we didn't implement the actual combat state yet. So the hit reaction seems to be working and it's also replicating, and the death animation is also working, so that looks pretty good. Let's try it the other way around. So if we fire with the client and make sure the host can actually see it. There we go. So that's working. We have hit reactions and we have death animations and montages set up, and at the same time we set up our health variable and things like that. So we need it for the behavior. It's not the most exciting stuff and it's not the most advanced setup, but it works and it's good enough for what we need. So in the next episode, we're going to go back to some behavior stuff and actually do some more fun stuff with the behavior trees again and things like that. So I hope the video wasn't too sloppy, and I think I did kinda okay for not recording for 2 or 3 months. So for the first video, forgive me, but I'm going to go back into it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Talk to you later. Bye bye.